Hello and welcome back to the WABAN podcast. I'm your host, Nim, and this week I am joined by that guy who decided to start a weird cult in a post-apocalyptic desert wasteland.
Rise with me, brothers. I don't know. This big voice.
Ride with me.
Yeah.
You die. Die.
I am immortal. Blah, 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 Valhalla. Blah, blah,
Enter
blah.
Valhalla, yeah. And Morton Joe is his name. I think that's his name, right? It's like a Morton Joe.
Yeah, Morton Joe.
Yeah. So we both watched Mad Max Fury Road for the first time ever.
Yeah.
Never having seen any other Mad Max movies, which from what I know, it doesn't matter that much if you watch the other ones. Like you have the general gist of it, which is, it's post-apocalyptic. Like, I think it technically takes place in Australia, I guess, or something. It's like post-apocalyptic, and like just all the crazy things that go on after, like, I don't know.
It's a very brutal and extreme one.
Yeah,
I actually quite liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like it too. I think the thing with this movie is, like, plot-wise, it's not very complex.
Yeah.
Which that's one of the biggest criticisms it gets. It's like, oh, well, it's like, it's just a one big chase scene, kind of.
I mean,
but it's,
I went in expecting like a high octane action movie and not much else. But I got a high octane action movie with a surprising a lot of else.
Yeah, there is actually some interesting story going on in terms of, like, the world building and the, like, and characterization. There's some interesting characterization here too. It's not just, it is, like, as far as there was more to it than I expected, because, like, I knew going in that the plot was pretty thin. But I didn't, so I wasn't expecting some of the, like, character moments that were there and stuff. Like, there are some actual emotional moments here.
Definitely, yeah.
And honestly, I didn't expect that. I was expecting, it was going to focus a lot on the action, the spectacle, the set pieces, which it
Cars
very
and
much did.
And
Yeah, it very much did focus on that.
But it didn't take away from anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, and you got the sense too that, like, each action scene, which, because I mean, yeah, technically it's like one big chase scene, but there are separate action scenes technically, right?
Yeah,
I did feel like each one had a purpose in the overall story too. It didn't feel like you were ever wasting your time, kind of.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Because, like, the first big action scene was when Max is still, like, chained to the front of the one vehicle.
Yeah.
Having his blood connected to
being a blood bag, which I want to get into that later.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's a really interesting idea. There's a lot of just really creative ideas in here, I think, is the thing. It's like
the brutality of the resource struggle and like the creativity of it is, I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's great. But yeah, no, because that action scene served as, like, obviously the first action scene, but also sort of showed how Max got free. And then there was also a quick action scene where Max was, like, fighting Furiosa.
Yeah.
And, like, he like was like, let's go. He started when he first started riding with them. And, like, I like how, like, when they first meet, he's, like, pointing a gun at them. He's like, let's go, let's get, but then they slowly over the course of the rest of the movie start to trust each other. And by the end, they're, like, really close. And he's actually willing to, like, share his name because, like, at the beginning, he's like, it doesn't matter what my name is, which it's kind of funny because it's like the movie is Mad Max, but the name Max
only
Actually,
things
it
like
is
that.
mentioned a few other times because there's like those weird flashback nightmares that he has,
Oh, right, yeah.
but which are those are a little vague, and it's like implying something that happened in the past.
Yeah, but you get the gist of what you
You
need
get the
to out
gist
of
of what
them.
it was. It's like he couldn't save somebody,
Mm,
and in the past or whatever, and it like still haunts him to this day or whatever. That's kind of,
yeah,
you get that. Um, but yeah, and then like there was like the one action scene where they're going through the canyon kind of area. That one, sir, that was when one of the wives, one of the women, like fell and like
yeah,
died like that. Um, yeah, but no, it's each. Yeah, it's all the action is balanced really well, where it's
mm,
like there you constantly feel a sense of like momentum where you're going, where each time it's like progressing in some way. um
yeah.
I never felt it stagnating and like it was stuck in one place, because sometimes I feel like in a movie that's focused a lot on action you can feel that way. You can feel like,
Like
okay,
the conflict is pointless, you mean?
right, yeah,
Mm,
um yeah, and like the conflict is simple. It's a simple conflict. It's, you know, she's trying to help these women escape because they're basically property, and like they don't want to, stay there. She's trying to get
yeah,
them to this safe haven, the green place, and then they're chasing them down. Like the conflict is simple, but it works.
yeah.
The setup works really well, and
And
it
even though it's simple, it's strangely detailed. Like they
yeah,
didn't go for anything broad; they went for small and intricate.
yeah, exactly. And because of that, I think you're able to get some really emotional character moments too, because you kind of see a lot of the emotion that goes along with this, like the what the women are going through and stuff. Like at one
Hmm.
point, the one woman is like almost wants to go back. She's like, maybe they'll forgive us if we just go back now. Like they're starting to go insane a little bit. They're
Yeah,
like the struggle, um, and like you see the some emotional moments with like Furiosa, like at closer to the end when she realizes the green place that she's trying to take them to is like complete.
gone.
It's like pretty much gone now. It's just like a swamp
Hmm.
now, and she's like, there's that emotional moment there. Like there's a lot of really intense emotions here.
The war boy getting like dragged out of his cult thinking when he makes a fool of himself in front of Immortan
Yeah.
Joe.
Oh yeah, because throughout it, like, and it's really sad though too when you see like the war boys, especially like once you see what this one is going through specifically. I think his
Hmm.
name was Nux or something like that. When you see what he's going through, it's interesting because it's like you kind of feel bad for the rest of them too, because you realize they're all kind of this same thing where they're just brainwashed
Brainwashed,
from the
yeah.
time they're born to believe in this, cult. Essentially, like, oh, if you die with, if you die with honor, and people witness you dying with honor, then you're going to go to Valhalla and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
they do that
I
like
always,
silver spray paint thing when they're about to like die, because they're like, yeah, they purposely try to die like in a big spectacle.
yeah. I
Be-
always wondered where the whole witness me came from.
yeah,
And now I know.
yeah, because I guess the idea is like if it's witnessed, you'll you'll die with honor and go to like Valhalla.
Yeah.
And there was that really like intense moment. He's there with Immortan Joe, and Immortan Joe talks to him, and he's like, here, you go on there, you do this, and he's like, you will go to Valhalla, blah blah
I
blah, and
myself
he's
will personally carry you to the gates of
to the
Valhalla.
gates of Valhalla. And then he like sprays him with the silver thing,
Hmm.
and then he's like, yeah, he jumps on, and then like, he
The
like
chain
fails,
yanks him
and
and
then
he
he just
falls down.
and then Immortan Joe just immediately goes mediocre, and then keeps driving, doesn't even care. Like
Hmm.
it's interesting to see how little he actually cares. Like everybody thinks of him as, they all think of him as like their god and stuff, but he doesn't care about them. He just sees them as like,
Fodder.
yeah, people to manipulate to
Hmm.
get what he wants, you know. So yeah, it's pretty much, they do a great job at making you hate the villain, and
Yeah.
you know. want to root for the heroes.
Can we talk about the villains for a moment?
Yes.
Because there's Immortan Joe. There's, I think Rictus was his name, which is just a really big dude. So
Yeah.
he doesn't really apply to this. But there's, I don't think they ever said his name, the little baby man with a beard in the chair.
Yeah.
And then who was apparently his brother, the guy from the not the Bullet Farm, the Gastown.
Yeah, so there's Gastown. The Gastown guy, he's like the bigger, he's that like kind of larger guy.
Yeah. And then I wouldn't be surprised
they
the
called
Bullet
him
Farm
like
dude.
They called him like the man eater or something like that. People eater.
Right.
So I'm assuming he's like cannibalistic, I guess. I don't know.
Well, the thing that I'm getting at is the little baby dude, the man eater, or Gastown man, that's, like British in suit.
And then there's the Bullet Farm guy.
Yeah, you saw his foot. It's like bulbous. And even Immortan Joe, like, he had those like pustules on his back.
Yeah.
Like, all of them, for whatever reason, have like some form of deformities. And I don't remember if Bullet Farm dude also did.
Well, he didn't until he went blind.
Yeah, but that was caused, not...
Right. It wasn't like, that's not the way he was at the beginning. But I don't think, beyond that, I don't think there was more.
And they never explain why that is. Like, why are... I don't know. I don't get it. It just seems like this random thing that they happen to be, like, deformed in some capacity.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's... Honestly, part of it's probably just a byproduct of, like, this post-apocalyptic world. Like, it's probably
yeah.
It's probably rare to have somebody who doesn't have some sort of disability,
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because, like, Immortan Joe, despite his sort of disabilities and his, like, bodily disformities, he tricks people into thinking he's like this strong god like person by creating something around it. So, like, for instance, he needs to wear that mask to breathe properly, but instead of putting on like having to wear a mask to breathe properly might be seen as like weakness, but he makes it look intimidating so that it makes him look stronger because he puts like the teeth on it and like so he does a lot of stuff like that to kind of make his deformities look stronger. And he puts like that like thing, like chest plate thing on him that has like all of these
glass?
That has all these like metals on it to like show like. So it's interesting how he like takes his deformities and his and stuff and makes them sort of finds a way to make him look stronger than he actually is.
It's kind of interesting.
Which is part of the propaganda, I guess, is to be like, this is he's trying to create himself into this like larger than life sort of symbol where it's like he's beyond human. He's not, he's above humanity kind of look. He tries to create this sort of thing around him.
Yeah, create himself as a symbol for his cult.
Yeah, exactly.
I did also want to talk about the because it's obviously post-apocalyptic, but how do I put it? The creativity of the combat, because like there's like the harpoons and plows, which that's interesting, but it's not really too unique. But there's like that huge like truck with the all the speakers and the guy playing guitar on it as like that's like that's like essentially pointless, but it's also a motivation kind of thing, like bagpipes or like war drums.
Yeah.
So he's just constantly playing like rock in the background, and
it's amazing. Well, yeah, because it's kind of like imagine imagine if you went back to like times where people would be fighting battles with like like you said, like bagpipes or like war drums and stuff. But imagine
Mm-hmm.
if it was that, but like modern day after electric guitars were invented,
Yeah, that's
kind of.
what it is.
And it's literally like fire is spraying from it. It's like that shot when you pull up and you just like you hear the electric guitar and then you like pull up because it's like on the other side there's the people playing those big drums. And then you pull
Mm-hmm.
up and you just see this guy just rocking out on this freaking
And he's
crazy looking guitar with fire spewing out of it.
and both of his like him and his guitar are like bungee corded to the truck, so
Yeah.
he's just like flinging himself around.
And the crazy thing is, throughout the movie, as they're battling and stuff, all this stuff is going on. He keeps playing. He just doesn't stop until he like crashes and dies, I guess.
That's just his job, apparently.
Like, yeah, that's literally all he does. He just sits there playing, and he's like strapped to these like strings so that he's kind of like bouncing, and he's kind of so that way, if it swings, the vehicle swings around, he can kind of just swing with it and stuff. Like, it's like, okay, that seems a little unnecessary, but okay, it's
awesome,
it's
and I
awesome,
appreciate it.
But
even besides like the ridiculousness and awesomeness of that, even like the the thunder spears, which that's what they're called in the video game, but they're just like the spears that explode when you throw them. Or like I forget what they call them, the pole like walkers or whatever, where they're just hanging on the poles off the carts.
Well, yeah, so that way they can like swing down and like grab people, basically.
Yeah. Like all these are like so creative and like
yeah, it is. It's like, I think that's one of the big things with this movie is like the art style and like the just set pieces. Like this, it's so stylized. Like style is like one of the biggest things with this movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you had essentially the same plot, but it was like kind of like not nearly as interesting in terms of like the style
like
and the set pieces and stuff,
cars,
it would just be kind of like like it wouldn't be as amazing. It wouldn't be as cool. One thing that's always funny is like I've noticed people point out about this movie too is like, so in this world, like fuel and stuff is very scarce, right?
Yeah,
so,
gasoline.
Yeah, it's very scarce. Yet the vehicles they have are like probably the most fuel inefficient vehicles ever.
Yeah.
Like they're just unnecessarily like
Immortan Joe's is like the back half of a car welded onto the rest of a car.
Right. Yeah, you're probably getting like
two low riders like tilted.
You got like 5 miles a gallon, you're just but I mean, and I get the idea too that like Morton Joe is like purposely tries to go for style.
Yeah.
Because it's part of his cult, kind of. It's part of his like, it's just part of their religion almost, is like he tries to do it that way. So he purposely tries to create a large spectacle, I think, around himself. Which is why he literally has a guy that exists just to play the electric guitar during his battles. Like,
yeah.
This guy just wants, he's basically just like, yeah, I want the most badass battle ever. I want the most badass army.
Or like the spectacle he creates when he gives them water. He could like send like a trickle down every once in a while, but no, he waits for like an indeterminate amount of time that we don't know, but it's probably extremely long. And when he finally releases it, he, full blast gushes of water out of those 3 or however many pipes it was.
But it's crazy. The thing too is like, he literally says like, do not become addicted to water, because if you do, its absence will make you want it even more. About whatever the line was,
drive
exactly.
You mad or something. Yeah.
And it's like, geez, like he's basically relating, getting his people to believe that like water, being addicted to water is almost like an alcoholism type thing, where it's like,
Yeah.
hmm,
No, you actually need
no.
that to live.
Yeah, I was gonna say, no, there's no such thing as like drinking too much water, really. You know, it's not the same. But he tricks his people into believing that, kind of, because it's
Mm-hmm.
like so that he can control them. Essentially, he can hoard it all
Yeah.
for himself. And I think the main like citizens or whatever, like the poor people at the bottom, are, it's interesting because I think he purposely tries to keep them as weak as possible so that there's
Yeah.
like, so that they could never like have an uprising against him or anything.
And like those guys don't really have a choice in the way they live at that point.
Yeah,
Because like
exactly.
where else are you gonna go to find water?
Well, right. And you notice they have that thing, that platform that rises up, and like people were trying to climb onto it to get up there, and they
Mm-hmm.
just got pushed right off. Like they can't even get up the mountain to like, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. It's in the middle of the desert. This is the only source of water, right? That's right near them, you know.
And they have no chance unless he lets them have it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of insane because like, and you notice throughout it, like he, up at the top, he has, you know, he has plants growing, he has
Mm-hmm.
his own nice little society kind of thing going up
Back
there.
behind that balcony that he stood on, there was like an entire pool.
Yeah, and at the very top of the mountain, there's like plants growing and stuff too. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's, you know, he, and it's sort of this whole like hoarding it all for himself. You know, I'm the king, you're the peasants kind of thing.
Yeah.
And the thing too is the only other people who are allowed up there with him are like his you know, the
His cult, the
his
war
cult,
boys,
the
his
war boys and
family.
stuff, the people who are so brainwashed that they wouldn't even try to overthrow him because of
Mm-hmm.
how, you know, like I get the feeling that the people at the bottom, if they had the power to, they might overthrow him.
Well, we saw that because they showed
Yeah.
his body and they started tearing it to shreds.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, so, but then at the top, he just kind of keeps this constant like breeding new children, and
Mm-hmm.
then like, you know, again, brainwashing them as they're raised, and they have like a half life or whatever too, so they like die young or whatever.
Yeah, which I guess that's like their way of saying, like, you're not meant to have a full life. You're meant to,
Yeah.
die in a gloriful death or
Hmm,
whatever you
hmm.
want to call it and go to
Yeah.
Valhalla.
Yeah. It's also interesting too, is like a large part of their like cult is created around vehicles.
Well, yeah, because like it, I don't know, I forget how it was portrayed in the games, but like some of them like worship it, and like I
Mhm.
guess we saw that a little bit in the movie where they were taking their wheels off of like this big like monument thing
Yeah, and it
when they
was
were
like a,
going off.
yeah, it almost seemed like a spiritual thing to them, like the vehicles and
Yeah.
stuff. And like that's, you know, that symbol they do with their hands where they clasp their hands together like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was watching something and it said like that's supposed to symbolize and look kind of like a, like the formation of like a V8, like 8 cylinder
Yeah.
engine
Mm.
kind of. So
And
it's like,
that
yeah.
is what they said during the monument kind of thing. That like,
Yeah.
glory to the V8 or whatever.
Yeah. Which is kind of interesting because it's like we wouldn't think to like create like a spiritual like worship of like vehicles nowadays, but like you think about it, like post-apocalyptic, you know, you could theoretically if, and, you know, you still have these vehicles, you could theoretically
Mm-hmm.
create something like that if you brainwash the people enough. It's interesting how it's like,
Yeah.
um yeah. I
Hmm.
also just love the idea that like the he lives at the top of this mountain and everybody else is down, because
Mm-hmm.
I mean it just creates this visual metaphor of like he is literally above the people, you know.
Oh
It's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
um
Which we were going off about water before. But let's talk about like the more interesting resource struggles in this, which
Mm-hmm.
are like stuff that I would have never thought of.
Mm-hmm.
Like they find out that Max is, a universal blood donor. So suddenly he is a blood bag,
Yeah.
which that is like, of course, that is being universal blood donor is like a huge resource. So, but like, they don't have like any refrigerators or anything else that you might need to store and properly use, an actual blood bag. So they just use the person themselves as the blood bag,
Yeah.
which is like, that's brutal. It's also a
Yeah.
really cool idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of cool. And I think it's kind of cool how like, so Max is is shown to be a very like resourceful person, right? Like
Hmm.
he tries to keep stuff that he can use or whatever. And you notice like that same tube that was used for his blood, he kept it with him
Hmm.
and used it to save Furiosa, like
Yeah.
closer to the end there. So it's like you have little details. You're like, oh wow, that's the same. Like it's kind of cool.
Hmm.
Like little details like that. Um,
But then there's even going past like the blood stuff, like mother's milk. Like that's an obscure but a very valuable resource. And
mhm.
they like, found a way to, harvest it like reliably.
Well, yeah, it literally looks like it's like almost like a cow milk factory. We just have a bunch of cows lined up, strapped to
Yeah.
like tubes, but like with women, like
Yeah,
human
it's
women.
horrible,
It's like
but also
horrifying. Yeah.
it's once again brutal, creative, and also an interesting idea that, most people wouldn't think of.
Hmm. Yeah, I think. Yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest strengths of this movie is just the detailed world building and like the just all those
Hmm.
little details of like how this society works and all this stuff. It's very creative, very just unique. Like
Hmm.
you've never seen anything else like it, kind of. Because I think when it comes to like post-apocalyptic type of stories, I feel like there's like some very distinctive like looks that a lot of people go for that are kind of a lot of times
Yeah,
very
yeah.
similar and kind of like they all kind of seem very similar, which is fine. Like you obviously need something to make your specific story stand alone.
Hmm.
So if it's not the style, it can be like whatever the specific story is. But this one, the story itself is decently simple. So they go completely overboard with the art style and just all those little
Yeah.
details.
Well,
There's a lot
because
of
like in a lot of apocalyptic media, they do the struggle for water, the struggle for food, the struggle for gasoline, and
yeah.
all of those. But Mad Max took it a step further with blood and mother's milk and other things, bullets, which I guess that was also done in other apocalypses, but they do like this unique, they find unique resources to use for this that are
Hmm.
equally as valuable, but like no one would
Yeah.
ever think of.
Hmm. Well, and there's like different like societies surrounded around certain resources. Like
Hmm.
there's there's the blood farm they or no the not the bullet farm they call it,
Hmm.
which I'm
That,
sure is just a factory, not a
yeah.
farm. And then there's like the gas town. There's
Hmm.
like different factions that essentially control one resource, and I would assume that like maybe Immortan Joe's faction maybe is like where other ones go to get water, maybe because he seems that he has those like water pipes
Yeah,
that
yeah.
go deep into the ground.
Aquacola.
Um, but yeah, it's interesting to see that, and then there's like just to see the different factions that have formed because it's like so I guess like whatever apocalypse happened, I don't know the details on like what caused the apocalypse.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Of this world. I know there's like a whole timeline that people have put together
Mm,
on when each movie takes place and where it takes place in different stages of the apocalypse and whatever. I don't really know a lot about that, but like whatever it is, it just caused everybody to kind of, I'm kind of, go off and just try to survive, but then eventually
hmm
slowly over time sort of create societies with whatever's, they could find whatever's left in the world, So I think that's really interesting.
hmm
Um, yeah. And like, I know there's something else I was going to say, but I don't remember what it was. But yeah, because you have the different like factions. Because you have
Yeah,
because it's Morton Joe's place. You have the gas town. You have the bullet farm. You have those guys who had like the spikes on their vehicles.
yeah, the buzzards.
Yeah, and then you also have like the ones who are in the canyon,
Mm,
like that on the motorcycles. So it's just kind of cool, like to see like all these little like factions and stuff.
yeah, and then the old women who used to live at Green Place.
Yeah, which there's still people living in the green place, I think, right? Because like
Well,
when they
yeah,
were passing through, there was
it
like
was
these people on these like stick things crawling
yeah,
across the
and
swamp.
they never mentioned what that was. They just
Yeah,
drove right by it, but that was so cool.
because for a
Cause like,
second I thought it was some kind of animal. Then I looked closer and I was like, wait, no, that's like a person. Like, but
yeah, they looked like they had like created like a feather suit with wings, and then like they had like stilts that they were walking on through the mud.
yeah, yeah. I was like, huh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, it was
Um,
really neat looking.
yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I'd be interested to see like in this universe like what the rest of the world is like, kind of, because
hmm
I think it's supposed to take place on the continent of Australia, because like that's, it was the movie was originally an Australian movie made in Australia, everything,
hmm hmm
the original movie. So I think that's just kind of what it is. But it'd be interesting to see like what the rest of the world is like, kind of. But
Yeah, well, you get the idea from the movie, and I think I vaguely remember in the game that there's like a whole section of like the map, if you're referring to the game, or just like the world that they showed in the movie, that is just bordered by like the salt expanse,
mhm.
where just like it's apparently just this like potentially infinite like plane of salt.
Huh, yeah. Yeah, that's it. Well, yeah, because in the movie he says, Max is like, if you keep going that way, you're not going to find anything. So the
Yeah.
only way to like go somewhere where you can actually survive is by going back.
hmm Which like if it is like on Australia, maybe that's like a dried ocean. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I think I saw something somewhere that said that it was like a large portion of the ocean had been dried up.
Mm. But also that makes me think like, okay, why is it so flat then?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe like there's been a lot of sandstorms that filled in different parts. Who knows? But
Yeah, maybe.
it's interesting though, because I don't really understand the timeline completely.
I
Because I
don't
think,
understand it at all.
yeah, because I think in the original Mad Max, um, it's like the apocalypse hasn't fully taken place. Like it's kind of like before there, because I guess at one point there was like some sort of like nuclear fallout. There was a bunch, different steps of the apocalypse that happened, kind of.
hmm
But in the like original Mad Max movie, it's kind of before some of the major stuff happened. So there's still some semblance of normal society. He's like a police officer somewhere.
Yep, yep.
But it's interesting though, because I'm like, well, in this movie, it seems like the apocalypse has happened like quite a long time ago.
Well, yeah, because everything's dried up.
Yeah, and he doesn't
Like
seem like
completely.
he doesn't seem super old, and it seems like a lot of these people have like grown up their whole lives in this apocalypse. So I don't know. The timeline
Mm-hmm.
seems like it doesn't make a lot of sense because I'm like, because like if Max was around before it like fully happened,
Then
then
why?
like
Then
I
a
don't know.
lot of people must have been, because he doesn't look too old,
He
but
doesn't
they
look
don't
super
seem to
old,
be.
right?
They don't
Yeah, I
seem to
mean,
realize.
I don't know. I think it's one of those things where it's like you just kind of it doesn't matter, you know. Each movie is a different, is like almost a completely different story, anyways. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like it's like James Bond, for instance. You know, you can't like from I've never watched James Bond, but like from what I
Neither
know,
have
it's
I.
like if you try to piece all the movies together in like one timeline, it doesn't all add up. Kind of, you know, it's like one of those types of things. So you just
Right,
kind of have to
right,
take it
yeah.
as like, you know, it could be like a separate thing. Like for instance, Fury Road might be like it's. I don't think it is technically supposed to be a reboot, but you could view it as a reboot almost. Like, I mean, it is a different actor
Mm-hmm.
because the original actor was that I cannot think of his name right now. I know what it is, but it's like oh, Mel Gibson. That's who it was. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
for the first three movies. But he's like old now, so they went with Tom Hardy, who plays it really well. But
yeah. I love his voice.
yeah, yeah, he's got a really like deep voice. Really
Yeah,
like
like, mm.
yeah, man of few words.
Yeah. Just like, well, I don't know, like for the first word he says to like any of the women or Frio while he's pointing a gun at them is just water. And that's it. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
and then he
yeah.
doesn't
It's
even ask them to cut the chain. He just holds up the chain and expects them to know.
yep, yep. Um, yeah, yep. He eventually gets it off though, the mask
Yeah.
thing they put on, so that's cool. I love how like so I actually thought like after they crashed like in the sandstorm, and he like gets up and he's still chained to oh I think his name is Nux or something like that. He's
I
still
don't
chained
remember.
to Nux. I thought he was dead, like the other guy. Like I thought
Well,
Nux was
yeah.
dead
Same,
at
same.
first, and then he like gets up and I was like, wait, he's alive?
Well,
And
yeah,
then
he starts stirring when he's like
yeah,
pouring water into his mouth.
and I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. And then I was like, but then I realized as I was watching, I was like, oh, it's actually a good thing that that character survived because he's actually it kind of is an important character
Mm-hmm.
in the rest of the movie, and he's like he's actually a pretty good, interesting character. It's
Yeah, yeah, because he's for like, because they kind of like start helping each other during that one little scuffle when he first wakes up.
mhm.
And he's just, and he's just excited, like, yo, we did it, blood bag.
Let's
Like,
take him back.
yeah,
Yeah,
like, and he's thinking, like, he helped, the blood bag helped him. So, we're both going to get a reward. He's
yeah.
like, I'm going to ask to drive the rig or whatever.
What are you
Whatever
gonna
you want
ask
to,
for? Yeah,
that's my jacket.
yeah,
And he's just like completely oblivious. Like, oh, well, you can
yeah,
ask for more than a jacket.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting, but yeah, yeah, he's definitely a good character because it's like
Mm-hmm.
he sort of goes through this character arc of like he's just completely brainwashed, completely following this cult, and then
Mm-hmm.
he starts to realize like, oh,
Well, like,
it's all
well, it
it's
was
all a lie,
interesting
kind of.
because he made a fool of himself in front of Morton Joe, and then one of the girls finds him like just like depressed over it, and like like saying like 3 times the gates were open to me, and 3 times I failed.
Yeah, yeah. It's and then she like talks to him, and those two they sort of form like a little bond with each other,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of cute. It's kind of nice. It's like
There was the one moment when she was like sleeping on his shoulder in the car, and there was a bug crawling on her, and he like lets it crawl off her, and it's like like, okay, this is kind of sweet, and then he just yum
Eats the
eats
bug.
the
Yeah.
bug. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
it's no longer sweet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Although
yeah,
it's
because they,
protein, you
yeah,
need
that's
food.
true. But yeah, because they sort of create sort of a bond throughout the rest of the movie because of that little conversation they have. Because like at the end,
Hmm.
when he sacrifices himself,
Witness me. Just
yeah, he she like looks, and she's, they show like she's giving like a look to him, like,
mm,
yeah, it's interesting. Um, uh, how about the one scene though, where the one woman that fell off, the one who was pregnant, fell
mm.
off, and like they thought she died, was crushed, but it turns out she kind of was breathing a little bit. She was kind of dead, almost slightly alive.
Well, like that it was very whiplash kind of scene because in the thing they thought she fell off. Turns out she like went between like the car and the trailer that it was pulling, and so
Yeah,
she was trying to get back in, and then she actually like you know they got too close to a rock and hit, and she flew off. And, got hit by the rock. And he
yeah.
says, she went under the tires because, in all honesty, she probably did.
Well, it looked like she did. Yeah, it looked
Yeah.
like from because I think Morton Joe tried to dodge her but didn't
Hmm.
because that she was like his favorite or whatever. Um, and
Right. Right.
she was like going to have his next child, so he probably didn't want to like destroy that. Um, but yeah, and it's like, but there's like the scene where he's just like, get the baby out, and they literally just cut her open just to pull the baby out, and then the
Mm,
guy's like, in another month, it would have been a viable human, huh? Like, would have
mm.
been a real. And then the one guy's like, "Oh, I had a baby brother."
Perfect in every way.
Like, it's just so like their way of every. It's just so messed up. Like you,
Yeah.
like I'm just watching it, and I'm
It's
just like,
so warped.
wow, like it's insane. So you really feel good when Immortan Joe finally dies. You're like,
Hmm.
yes, good
What
job,
does he take a
Furiosa.
harpoon to the face that rips off his mask?
Well, he had like something. I think it was like somehow a chain or something got attached to it. Because like in Furiosa's like hanging on the side of the vehicle, and she's just like, what did she say? She said like, "Remember me" or something like that.
Hmm.
You'll remember me, and then she like puts the chain in like the wheel, and it gets caught up, and that just rips his mask off,
Hmm.
and like rips part of his face off, and just kills him. Um, yeah,
And
yeah,
like
it's
one of that entire scene was cool because okay, they already planned to like block off the canyon with by exploding the trailer, but they planned to like keep the car pulling the trailer going. But instead, one of the girls got picked up by one like the pole vaulters or whatever you call them,
yeah,
and got placed into Immortan's Joe's truck. Then they kill Immortan Joe, and everyone like, okay, we'll just explode the entire rig in the canyon and get on a Morton Joe's car.
mm-hmm, yeah, yep, and then kill Immortan Joe, and there you
Yeah.
go. Um, yeah, yeah, I know it's cool. I like that Furiosa was the one who finally like killed him too. I think
Yeah.
that was pretty good, fitting moment. She's almost like the main character of the movie. I feel like because like it's
Hmm.
obviously named after Max, but I don't like.
Well,
Eh,
he's like a circumstantial involvement.
yeah,
Like the story has nothing to do with him. He's just there and like
he
trying to
happened.
survive. And he happened upon this scenario.
Yeah, and
And
it
his best bet of surviving is to
right.
stay in it.
He starts out. He's just trying to survive, and then he starts to realize what's going on. And he's like, I think he actually is like starts to be like, yeah, I want to actually help these people too.
Hmm.
Because he's kind of thinking back on his like, whoever he couldn't save before or whatever
Hmm.
that he keeps like having nightmares and stuff about. And he's like, you know what, maybe I can redeem myself and like help these people out. Um, cause yeah, because like originally they were like gonna ride off and he was just gonna leave them, and then he went and he was like, hey, your best bet is to go back, and he actually helped them. Because I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
the thing is, I think throughout the movies, from what I know, so in the first movie, he's like a cop, right? He's like a police officer in this like small town or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So he's always had this kind of view of like he's just wants to help people. And throughout the movies, that's kind of what each one is like, so like the first one, he was the very much the main character, and it was like his, what happened with him. And then the second movie and the third movie, it's more like this, where he's like, he just happens to be in this one place and he's there to like help somebody else.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's kind of what his character has been since, apparently that's what his character has been like since the second movie, and it's like it
Mm.
continuing even now, where it's like,
Like he just helps other people along with their stories,
yeah,
and he
yeah,
just goes on his way afterwards.
yeah, kind of, yeah. I think that's kind of the
That's
idea.
a really interesting idea for like a main character, or like who is supposedly the main character, to be just like a support for other characters.
Right, right. So if they ever make another Mad Max movie, it would probably be surrounding completely different characters. It probably
Hmm.
wouldn't be like Furiosa and these people.
And Mad Max would just show up and
Yeah,
get into a circumstance that he should help them.
yeah, yeah. I think that's the general idea behind the movies, at least from what I know.
Mm.
It's kind of cool. I was seeing this thing. It was like showing sort of the progression of like the vehicles in the movies.
Oh yeah.
So it was like the first movie, most of the vehicles look like normal real world vehicles that we have now.
Hmm.
But the first movie was also like extremely low budget, and they just kind of worked with what they had. And that's like the second movie. They start to have a few like modifications to them and whatever.
Mm.
And then like the third movie, they start to really go a little bit farther, like even further with that sort of modification thing. And then once you get to this movie, it's like absolute insanity.
Yeah,
Like
I
all the
really love
vehicles are
them.
just like some sort of hodgepodge thrown together thing.
Hmm.
Like probably just whatever parts they could find that fit together and worked to create a vehicle kind of thing. And
Yeah, the one with tank treads.
yeah, it's like the top of it looks like a normal car kind of, but then it
Hmm.
just has like, yeah, tank treads on it, and it's just like it's really it's a
And
really
like I said
cool thing.
before, a Morton Joe's that is just like, one half of a car welded to the back half of another car.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and then there's one that literally just has a whole thing of just giant drums on top of it, and then in the front
Hmm.
there's a whole guitar thing with like giant amps.
And the buzzards with their
Yeah,
like
yeah,
insanely spiky vehicles.
yeah, because those looked like somewhat normal vehicles, except for the fact that they had the spikes all over them too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. No, it's cool. Like the art design is like so good in this. It's just so cool and creative.
yeah. I
um,
I need to get and try to finish Mad Max the video game,
mm, yeah,
because it
yeah.
had like all of this in it, like the trailers, the buzzards, the thunder spears, the harpoons.
Right. So
It
I'm
was really cool.
assuming. So is this game more based on the Fury Road type
I believe so.
people then?
Yeah, the Max pretty much looks like the guy in Fury Road, I think, as far as I
Okay.
remember.
Yeah.
It's been a
Yeah.
few years.
Right. Right. Yeah. Because yeah. Yeah. I'm interested in watching the other Mad Max movies. But they're like decently
Well,
older. I don't know exactly when they came out, but it's like I'm trying to so yeah, so looking at it now. The original Mad Max came out in 1979.
mm,
Mad Max 2, the what is it? The Road Warriors or something like that is what it's called. Yeah, the Road Warrior. Which I think is the one that a lot of people say is the best of the original three, at least. That one came out in 1981, and then the third one, Beyond Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, came out in 1985. So yeah, they're like the mostly 80s. And then they didn't do a new one until, what is this, 2015, I think.
I believe
Fury Road.
so.
You know what's really cool though too is like all of the filming and everything was all pretty much like practical effects. Like there wasn't really any like CGI stuff. You know, all these vehicles were really there. All of this like a lot of this was just stunts. Like obviously there was probably some level of like CGI here and there, but like
Yeah.
most of it was like real stunts. Like when a vehicle flipped over, they really flipped it over, you know, like
I do remember when Rictus like pulled the engine out of one of the cars. I
mhm.
do remember like that's definitely CGI. Like I can tell by the
Yeah,
visuals that that's
yeah, there's
CGI.
definitely some stuff like that. And then they what they do too to really like create they to create a cool look is they have a very like saturated like color grading where
Okay.
like all the
Okay.
colors are like amplified. So like the sand looks almost like orange, you know, like full because it's
Oh
like
yeah. Yeah.
they really when they did color grading for it, they really like saturated all the colors to make it look to give it the look it had, you know.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's a lot of it's I don't know, it's just a lot of it was like practical effects and like they, you know, they just had like and it's there's not like a lot of like quick cut shaky cam stuff. A lot of it's like you can see everything that's going on, understand where the action's happening. Like it's very
Hmm.
very well choreographed, very well put together. Like it's clear that they spent I mean obviously the main focus of this movie is like the action and the spectacle. So they put
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of planning and time and effort into make doing that just right. It's amazing. Um, interestingly enough, too, originally when they were like doing this movie, they didn't have a screenplay. Apparently,
Like they didn't have like a script, you mean? Or like
yeah. So I guess originally when they were doing it, I think they might have developed a script at one point in the
hmm
stage because obviously there's like dialogue and stuff, but like most of it was planned out through like most of the story and the sequence of events and stuff was planned out through storyboards.
so like they like as they were making the movie, they figured out what the next step would be.
Right. Well, it was so they would do story they did storyboards first, which is basically, you know, drawings of like
Hmm.
what shots you're going to do and stuff like that. So it was mostly most of the sequence of events and stuff was planned out through storyboards because and I think the reason they did that is because the you know, the plot is pretty simple.
Hmm.
Most of it is action scenes. So it was very like specific. So like it's kind of hard to portray what an action scene is going to be like to plan an action scene in screenplay format
Hmm.
because it's you know obviously a good action scene is it's very much a visual thing where it's like it's hard to kind of write down, you know, you can be like this happens then this happens but it's kind of hard to like fully capture what you're trying to capture.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's interesting because storyboarding is something that you do in most movies, but it usually happens after the script, you know.
Hmm.
So it's kind of interesting that a lot of it was planned out through storyboarding. Um, it's a very unique way
Yeah.
of doing pre-production for a movie, you know, um, which makes sense in a way because it's like the visuals are sort of the most important part of this movie. So it makes sense that they would plan it out through a visual medium of, you know, drawings and
Oh
stuff.
yeah. Yeah. Because the action has, a lot more weight than, the story or anything else.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. But they still do have a decent story. Like, again,
Mm-hmm.
the story is simple, the plot is simple, but there's good story beats there. There's good, and a lot of it is visual storytelling. Like, there's a lot of stuff, like, not a lot of information is communicated through dialogue. Like, a lot of it's just communicated through the visuals and just how people react to things, and like it's
Mm-hmm.
just really well put together.
I I don't know. The development of them, of like Furiosa and Max and everyone else, like actually starting to get along instead of him like
Yeah.
having to point a gun at them at every moment.
Yeah.
Of where like, okay, she offers like to get the mask off him if they, he lets him come with. Like, okay, sure. So that, but then he's like paranoid the entire time, grabs all the guns in the cabin and, constantly has her at gunpoint.
Yeah.
And then, she hands him a file and he, starts like furiously doing that while he's having her at gunpoint.
Yeah.
But the, he he risked like leaving them alone in order to go check out what's dragging behind the truck.
Mm-hmm.
And when he comes back, everything's fixed, everything's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or I believe that's about the point where the war boy starts getting involved. But after that, when they're going through the canyon, like he still has everyone at gunpoint, but she trusts him to she like asks his name and trusts him to like drive the truck.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
gives him the sequence that was the only thing that got them on the truck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a really good like progression of
Hmm.
like, start off, they don't trust each other at all, and then they slowly build trust over time, and the trust isn't built through them like having good conversations or anything like that. It's built through just the action that's happening,
Yes.
them just having to being forced to work together, and they just kind of slowly just naturally build trust over that. It's really, really well put together.
Hmm.
um yeah, yeah, the movie looks great. It's one of those movies where like every shot is like a piece of art. Like, there's like every shot is just really looks amazing, and there's just so much detail in each shot. It's one of those where there's never like a boring shot, kind of. It's all
Yeah.
just, yeah.
There's a few lulls in the action where, they're needed and, you need to like justify what the next bit of action will be.
Yeah.
But like any moment of the action scenes is like jam packed with, you know, crazy, insane shit.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the whole thing. Yeah, I don't know. It's just really good.
Yeah.
It, like, if
I,
you're
you go ahead.
I think this is an example of how to do this type of movie right. Like, if you're gonna do a
Hmm.
movie that has a simple like chase, like that's basically the movie is, right. It's a chase.
Hmm.
If you're gonna do a movie where that's pretty much the whole movie, and then it's just action scenes involved with that, I think this movie is like one of the best, probably possibly the best example of a movie that does that well, of like how to do that type of thing right.
Hmm. If you want to
Um,
focus solely on action, then, you can do that. And if you do it like
right.
this, like, this is the right way to do that. Because
Yeah.
it's not, it is focused solely on action, but it also has enough to justify it and to keep
Yeah.
you interested.
Yeah. Like, I personally would probably consider this to be one of the best action movies I've ever seen.
Hmm.
Specifically action, right? Uh as
Yeah, I
far
was
as like,
very pleasantly surprised.
yeah, as far as like movies that are focused mostly on action, this is one of the best. This might be my favorite like action movie.
Hmm.
Um because like other movies have action, but that's not like, there's more focus on like the story and other kind of adventure stuff.
Yeah.
Like for instance, like there are movies that I like better than this. Like for instance, if you look at like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, for instance, I would say I like that better than Mad Max. But as far as action goes, as far as a purely action movie, because those are like, they include action, but it's very like adventure, and there's a lot
Yeah,
more interesting
story.
story going on, and as far, a lot more going on. But if you're going purely just based on like a movie that focuses pretty much completely on action, this is might be my favorite.
Yeah, I remember
Now,
I watched the live action movie for Assassin's Creed. It is like the story is non-existent and it is just action scenes, and like it's entertaining. That's about it.
yeah, I think the thing is, you need some sort of story there. You need, even if it's a simple story, you need something, and
Yes,
then you
yes.
need something to make you feel like you're getting somewhere too. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want the action to just be like, oh, it's happening, but you don't like, you're not it's not moving forward in any way. Whereas like this, despite how simple the plot is, they do a good job at making each sort of action scene, each moment feel like you're making progress and you're getting somewhere.
Hmm.
Like it all feels important, and it all feels like it's pushing them forward, instead of just feeling like, oh, well, this scene was pointless. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and honestly, I don't really have many negative things to say about this movie, because like, it does what it was trying to do perfectly. Like,
Yes.
it's not a great movie in terms of like intricate plot or anything like that, but it wasn't
Hmm.
trying to be. It takes what it was supposed to be and does it like as well as it could. I can't imagine, like, there's nothing I would change about it. Like, it's just
Yeah.
really good. It's just really solid for what it's trying to do. And
It just did one thing and it did it really good, and that's all it needed.
yep, it's probably one of the best, possibly the best chase movie ever. Because you have other movies where it's like a one big chase kind of thing, which like,
Hmm.
I don't know, what are other ones, like
Is
Smokey
that
and the Bandit or something like that. I don't
I
know.
have no idea. Is
There
that
are
what
other
Fast and Furious
movies.
is about? I've never watched any Fast and Furious movies.
I don't think so. No, it's not. That it involves races,
Yeah.
like street racing, I think. I don't know. And then like each movie gets more and more insane, where it's like just straight up crazy action, I guess. I don't know.
Hmm.
I've never watched any of them, but no, there's definitely, I don't think the genre of like chase movies is like a huge thing, but like there's
Oh
definitely
no,
other
definitely
movies
not.
that are like that. Um, and you know, this is
Yeah.
one that does it the best, I think. Uh,
Ugh.
and I am actually interested in watching the other Mad Max movies now. I know, like, I don't know if I'll like them as much as this, because I think the thing is with those movies, I think they put some focus on like the plot and stuff, right? Like they put more
Hmm.
focus on plot. Um, and I think what people have said is like this movie sort of takes the thing that people love about the Mad Max movies, which is like, the action and like the vehicles and a lot of the cool like set pieces and stuff, and
Yeah.
takes those things and focuses pretty much solely on that, with enough of a plot to keep you interested, to keep you invested, but not, you know, too much. So yeah, when we started the podcast, I was like not sure if we would be able to talk. I was like, this movie's not it's not very complicated to talk about. I feel like there's not a lot to talk about, and I was like, we should be like, should we plan other topics in case we
Hmm.
don't talk about it long enough? But we're already at like past an hour, so
Yeah.
we did
Yeah,
end
this
up
is
being able to
good.
talk about it. Yeah. I guess it's because like there's not a lot to talk about as far as the plot goes, but there's a lot to talk about as far as just some of the details, some
Yeah,
of the interesting.
the
Yeah,
resource desperation, the
yeah,
intense and creative action,
yeah,
and the different vehicles and how they use them and the different tools that they invented that are just crazy.
yeah. I yeah. If you want a really really solid good action movie, um, this is it.
Hmm.
There's also just so many little details in the movie of like visual storytelling or like little like details. So like for instance, you remember the scene where like he goes the it's like nighttime and he goes
Hmm.
to like shoot the guy who's in charge of like the bullet farm guy. It's like
Yeah,
after them
the guy who has
and he
bullets for teeth.
yeah. And he goes to like shoot at him with like the big gun.
Mm.
Um and he like he only has like a few shots and he misses the first few, and then Furiosa comes up and it's like there's only one shot left, and then
He
she
just
doesn't he just hands it to her like, yeah, here,
and
you take it.
uses his shoulder as.
Right. So it's interesting because earlier in the movie there was that one scene where they were shooting the guys that were on the motorcycles, I believe,
Hmm.
maybe.
Well,
And
yeah,
like
that
he
was the
was
one where she was trying to
right.
get back to, rejoin with Immortan Joe. And she saw like two guys on a motorcycle in the horizon, and she just took them out with one shot.
Right. Yeah. It's like she was like taking each person out with one shot, whereas Max was like using a handgun and he was like taking multiple shots. So I
Mm.
think it's almost like Max remembered that when she came up and was like, "Hey, let me take a shot," and he was like, "Yeah, you take the shot. Like I saw how you did earlier. You do it."
Mm.
It's like I know how much of a sharpshooter you are. Kind of. It's like you notice like there he doesn't say it. He doesn't say they don't have to have him say like,
It is like
"Oh
a
yeah, I
silent
saw how good you were
understanding.
earlier."
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just kind of like, if you pick up on it, you kind of like, oh yeah, he remembers from earlier, which is also interesting because you realize where later on where Furiosa came from. She was
Hmm.
like from this group of women or whatever, and she was returning to them, and those women are all like sharpshooters as well.
Yeah,
Because like she's like the one woman's talking about how like they take like they're like one she's like one bullet one you know one person down, or like
yeah,
basically one
yeah.
shot one kill, but she said it differently.
Mm.
um so like it's kind of like, oh, so that's probably partially why Furiosa is such a like sharpshooter as well.
That scene also. I think there was like one other scene that also did this, where a gun went off right next to Max's head, and they did the ringing in your ears,
Yeah,
just like
yeah.
a neat little detail.
Well, so you kind of almost get this sense that like you're like so you're like Max should be like have really bad hearing probably,
Mm.
right?
Oh yeah.
And there's some details where you almost think maybe he does. Maybe that's why he doesn't talk much, because he doesn't like because he can't hear what the other people are saying as much, so he doesn't have a lot of like
Hmm.
it's harder for him to hear what they're saying, and like I don't know.
Maybe
I don't know. There's like little things like that, but it's interesting. Maybe he must have like tinnitus or whatever you call it. Is that what it is when you have like the ringing in your ears?
Well, yeah, but that's like a constant thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Could a gun going off in your head give you tinnitus? Like, it could
I
definitely
don't
damage
know.
your hearing, but I don't think it would give you tinnitus.
I really don't know. I'm just remembering from like if you ever watched the show Archer,
Nope.
it's an animated show. The main
I know
character
what it is. Yeah, yeah.
he always talks about how he has tinnitus because people shoot guns so close by.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
there's like every time they shoot a gun, he's like there's like the ringing in his ears, and he's like, it's a full on like comedy, like ridiculous uh thing. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, no, it's really good. There's just so many details that are interesting. Also, apparently, this is an interesting detail. Apparently, the scenes that were at night were actually filmed during the day and then recolored in editing to be dark, to look like night. They did that so they wouldn't lose any detail in like in like, you know, in like the setting, right? So they could still see everything properly.
That's
So that's
interesting.
kind of cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to learn like how to do that, like how to like edit a scene to like recolor it to make it look like it's night, you know? Maybe that's a trick I could use in like movies in the future. I don't know. Because I got this horror movie that I'm working on, so we'll see.
Yeah, you sent me the script and I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, that's okay.
Because I've been working for the entire week.
Yeah, well, you're off today, so maybe you can read it. It's fine. It doesn't take too long to read. I don't remember how. I don't know. It didn't take me too long to read. But yeah.
38 pages.
Yeah, but that's because it like separates.
Oh, right. Yeah. It's like script.
So once a scene ends, it skips to the next page to start the next scene. So the actual amount of pages, if you scrunched it all up, would be closer to 27, I think, because that's what it was on the thing. But then when you save it as like a PDF, it automatically switches it to like, yeah. But yeah, so I think I mentioned that in a few episodes ago that I was going to work on a horror movie, I think. So there you go. There's another mention of it. Still don't know when I'm going to be actually working on producing it, but we'll see how it goes.
All right.
It's called Whispers. That's the only hint. That's the only hint I'm going to give to the audience.
Okay.
I don't want to give out like what the plot is, but what the concept is, but it's called Whispers. All right. Anyways, I think we're probably about ready to wrap up unless you have anything more to say about Mad Max Fury Road.
No, I just that I was expecting an action movie with nothing else, but I got an action movie with, quite a lot of else. So, it was a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I enjoyed it more than I expected because like I knew like the action was going to be good because like that's what the movie's praised for. But I'm the type of person who like if all I get is action scene after action scene, I kind of start to get bored. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
like it's cool, but you're like, okay, can you give me something more interesting than just a bunch of fighting? But it actually did a really good job at keeping my interest throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, I was very surprised.
Yeah, so more than because it's 2 hours long. So,
I must have been like halfway through, and then I realized like I was like fully focused on the movie, and I was just like, this has no right being as good as it is. What is happening?
Yeah, it really drew me in. I will say that because like. I mean, the thing is it's one of those movies where it's like it's 2 hours long, but it doesn't feel like that long. Like it feels like it's going by pretty quick. You're just kind of, you're very, it drew me in. It really like got me invested. Just, because of just how interesting everything is. Like down to just the visual. It's visually intriguing. It's the world is interesting. The world building is interesting. It's not just the visuals, but also the sound. It's really good with like soundtrack and stuff, and like especially with like the electric guitar and stuff.
Yeah, that was what I was thinking of.
And then there's like that
just jamming.
Yeah, and then there's that one piece of music they play a lot that's really good. That's like in a lot of the action scenes. How does that go again? It's like the
I do not remember at
I don't know.
all.
There's like, I think it plays in the trailer too, so maybe I'll watch like the trailer for it. I don't know. It's like there's like this one piece of music that like it's like a motif that plays a lot throughout the movie,
I
through
get
a
what you
lot of the
mean. A
action
lot of
scenes.
like anime or video games will do like in a very intense moment, they'll repeat the same like small little song that's like maybe like 2 minutes long.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Persona 5, there's I think it's called Awakening.
yeah.
Anytime like something really big is about to happen or a specific scene is about to occur, they play that and it always gets you pumped up for what's about to happen.
Yep, yep. Yeah, yeah. There's like one specific piece of music that plays multiple times throughout this. And it's mostly in like the action scene, like the heavy action moments and stuff, like the really
Yeah,
intense
yeah.
moments. I forget exactly how it goes. It was playing in my head last night, like after I watched it, it was just playing in my head over and over again, but now I can't remember it.
Mm.
I don't know. But yeah, that's really good. And the electric guitar, man, that's just
That
that visual of just that car driving by and just this guy hanging from like ropes just playing this guitar with flames spewing out of it is just
yes.
that is just so, like wow, like that's just such an amazing visual, you know.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just
great.
it's in so insane. It's like it's like ridiculous, but it's like it just
It's
fits so well too.
hmm
It
and like you can even argue that there's a like a point for like boosting morale to it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like you said, like playing like war music, you know, like the
Hmm.
bagpipes as you're marching to war, or like whatever, you know, it's that type of thing where it's like, and it's also Immortan Joe, I think, trying to like create a spectacle around himself.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, because like he literally just, that's all this guy does the entire time. The, he like never stops. They're driving for like hours and hours on end,
Hmm.
even not even just in the action scenes, like he's just as they're driving, like you hear, like you see them in a distance, you just lightly hear the guitar, and like that's like something that like signifies when they're getting close, you know what I mean, like they're like
Yeah.
they're getting close, we can because you can hear the electric guitar just playing.
The I also love the only time that he stopped playing while everyone was resting, and he was like sitting on his guitar as if it was like a hanging like swing chair and just like taking a nap, and then the truck starts moving and he immediately gets up and like starts jamming immediately again.
Dude, yeah, this guy, I hope like this guy's just loving life, he just really loves
Yeah.
playing the guitar, I guess. It's just, and he like, you don't even see his face, he wears like a mask that like covers his face, it's like he's
Hmm.
just like they didn't have to do that, you know, like,
He's the best character.
but they did. Yeah, he's my favorite character. Just I don't even know what his name is, he's just electric guitar guy, I guess,
Hmm.
like flame guitar, I don't know. And they had to
So
add the
good.
detail that flames were spewing out of the end of the guitar too, like they
It's
just
just
had to do
so over the top and so good.
that. Yeah, it's insane, I love it. But yeah, we should probably close.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for listening to this week's episode of the WABAN podcast. There are new episodes every Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time. So yeah, you can catch it, a new episode every week at that time. This is episode 13, I believe. No, 12. 13,
13. It
13.
says at the top. Look at it. It's right there.
It says 13.
Yeah.
Yeah, 13. There you go. Yeah, I labeled it as 13. So yeah, episode 13. But yeah, every Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time. And you can listen to it on multiple different platforms. That one is my YouTube channel. I post video versions on my YouTube channel. That is Nim TV, NIM TV. You can go there, or you can listen to it on multiple audio platforms if you would like as well. There's Anchor.fm/Waban. And then you can also listen to it on Breaker, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. I believe those are the only other ones. And yeah, so thank you so much for listening. Next week, we're going to continue our Avatar discussion. Next week, we're going to finish our Avatar discussion because we'll watch the rest of season 3 of Avatar and talk about it. So there you go. We'll finish that. We only have like 10 episodes left to talk about. So yeah, thank you for listening to the WABAN podcast. I have been Nim.
And I'm the goodest boy.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.